Want to finally master the most important Excel formulas in one place? In this video, I'll walk you through the top 25 Excel functions for beginners, step by step, with real examples and simple explanations. You'll learn how to use functions like sum, if, count, left, right, and many more. If you're just getting started with Excel, or you want a solid refresher, this guide is all you need. Let's get started with the very first formula. In this table, we have a list of grocery items along with their categories and prices. Now let's calculate the total price of all items listed. To do that, we'll use the sum function. Click on the cell next to total amount and type equals sum D 5 to D16. Press enter and Excel will add up all the prices from the list, giving you the total cost of everything. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have monthly income values listed for the entire year. Now, let's calculate the average income per month. To do that, we'll use the average function. Click on the cell next to per month average and type equals average C5 to C16. This formula adds up all the monthly income values and divides the total by the number of months, giving you the average. Press enter and Excel will show the average monthly income. Let's move on to the next function. Here we have the same list of employees and their salaries. This time, let's find out who earns the lowest salary. To do that, we'll use the min function. Click on the cell next to minimum salary and type equals min open parenthesis C5:C 14 close parenthesis. Excel will scan the entire salary column and return the smallest value in the list. Press enter and you'll see who gets paid the least. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of employees along with their salaries. Now let's find out who earns the highest salary. To do that, we'll use the max function. Click on the cell next to maximum salary and type equals max open parenthesis C5:C 14 close parenthesis. This tells Excel to look through the salary column and return the largest number. Press enter and you'll see the highest salary from the list. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of employees and their salaries. Now let's count how many salary values are listed in the column. To do that, we'll use the count function. Click on the cell next to count and type equals count open parenthesis C5:C 14 close parenthesis. This formula will count how many numeric values are in the salary column, ignoring any empty cells or text. Press enter and you'll see how many salary entries are there. Let's move on to the next function. In this example, we have a list of employees in column B, starting from cell B5 down to B14. We want to count how many names are actually entered in this range. To do that, we're using the COUNTA function. You can see the formula here in cell D5, =COUNTA B5 B14. This function counts all non-empty cells. That includes any text, numbers, or even formulas. So in this case, as a result, COUNTA will return 8 because there are 8 names listed. Let's move on to the next function. In this example, we have a list of full names written in lowercase in column B. To make each name properly capitalized, meaning the first letter of each word becomes uppercase, we're using the proper function. You can see in cell C5 we've written =proper B5. This function will take the name Alice Morgan and return it as Alice Morgan. It does the same for all the other names, fixing their formatting by capitalizing the first letter of each word. This is especially useful when cleaning up names or titles in your datasets. Let's move on to the next function. In this example, we have a list of full names written in lowercase in column B. Now, let's say we want to convert all of these names to all capital letters. For that, we use the upper function. In cell C5, we type =upper B5. This function converts all the letters in the cell to uppercase. It does the same for every row, turning each name into fully capitalized text. This is helpful when you want to standardize text formatting, especially for things like ID cards, email headers, or forms. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have first names and last names listed separately. Now let's combine them to create full names. To do that, we'll use the CONCATENATE function. Click on the first cell under Full Name Concatenate and type =concatenate B5 space C5. This formula joins the first name and last name with a space in between. You can also use a comma, dash, or any other symbol instead of a space. For example, =concatenate B5, C5 would return Alice Johnson. And then drag the formula down to apply it to the entire list. You might be wondering, what's the difference between concat and concatenate in Excel? They both do the same thing. They combine text from multiple cells. The key difference is concat is the newer, more modern function. Concatenate is the older version and is now considered deprecated, which means it's still available but not recommended for new formulas. So, whenever possible, you should use concat, especially in newer versions of Excel like 365 or Excel 2019 Plus. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of weekday names. Now let's extract only the first 3 letters from each day's name. To do this, we'll use the left function. Click on the first cell under left 3 char and type =left B5, 3. This tells Excel to take only the first 3 characters from the text in cell B5. Press Enter and then drag the formula down to apply it to the rest of the list. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of codes that include some text and a 4-digit number. Now let's extract only the last 4 digits from each code. To do this, we'll use the right function. Click on the first cell under right 4-digit and type =right B 5, 4. This formula takes the last 4 characters from the text in cell B5, which gives us the numeric code. Press Enter and drag it down to apply the formula to the rest of the cells. Let's move on to the next function. We have a list of product codes like code 1009, code 1589, and so on. But what if we just want the numeric part of each code? Let's use the mid function to extract the last 4 digits from each code. The formula is =mid B5 5 4. Here's how it works. We start from character 5, right after code, and we want to extract 4 characters. The result? Just the digits, exactly what we need. Let's move to the next function. In this table, we have a list of ID numbers. Now let's find out how many characters are in each ID. To do this, we'll use the LEN function. Click on the first cell under number digit and type =len B5. This formula counts all the characters in the cell, including letters, numbers, and even symbols. Press Enter and drag it down to see the length of each ID number. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of full names. Some of these names may include extra spaces, either at the beginning, at the end, or even between words. To clean this up, we'll use the trim function. Click on the first cell under Full Name Trim and type =trim B5. This formula removes all unnecessary spaces, leaving just a single space between each word, and drag the formula down to apply it to the rest of the list. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of employees and their salaries. Now let's categorize each salary as either higher or lower, based on a threshold of $3,000. To do that, we'll use the IF function. Click on the first cell under the IF category column and type equals if C 5 greater than or equal to 3,000, higher, lower. This formula checks if the salary is greater than or equal to 3,000. If it is, Excel returns higher. Otherwise, it returns lower. Press Enter and drag the formula down to apply it to the rest of the employees. Let's move on to the next function. In this example, we have a list of employees along with their salaries in column C. Let's say we want to find the highest, second highest, and third highest salaries in this list. To do that, we use the large function. In cell F5, we've written $large, $5, $14, 1. This formula looks at the range from C5 to C14 and returns the first largest value, which is the highest salary, $5,500. To find the second and third largest salaries, we simply change the second argument. For the second largest, $large, $5, $14, 2, $4,500. For the third largest, large, $5, $14, 3, $3,500. Now, let's say I change one of the salaries. For example, I update Julia's salary to $9,000. As you can see, the result of the large function updates automatically to reflect the new highest value. This dynamic behavior makes it incredibly useful for live dashboards and real-time data analysis. The large function is perfect when you need to extract top values from a dataset, like top sales, best scores, or in this case, the highest salaries. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we're working with the same salary data for a group of employees. But this time, instead of finding the largest values, we want to find the smallest salaries in the list. To do that, we use the small function. In cell F5, we write $small, $5, $14, 1. This formula looks at the salary range from C5 to C14 and returns the first smallest value, meaning the lowest salary in the list. Just like with the large function, we can adjust the second argument to get the second and third smallest values. $small, $5, $14, 2, returns the second lowest salary. $small, $5, $14, 3, returns the third lowest salary. Now, let's say I update Diana's salary to $350. Which is significantly lower than before. Immediately, the result of the small function updates automatically, and $350 is now shown as the lowest salary in the list. This makes the small function really helpful when you need to track minimum values in a dynamic dataset, such as identifying underperforming sales or the least spending departments. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we have a list of employees along with their salaries in column C. Sometimes in real datasets, some salary cells might be left empty, and we may want to count how many blank entries we have. To do that, we use the COUNTBLANK function. In cell E5, we've written $COUNTBLANK, C5, C14. This formula checks the range from C5 to C14 and returns the number of blank cells in that range. And if I delete any other salary value, for example, remove Helen's salary, that cell becomes blank, and the COUNTBLANK result will update automatically to reflect the new total. This function is very useful for spotting missing data and validating data completeness before doing analysis. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we're using the Now function in Excel, one of the easiest and most dynamic datetime functions available. By simply typing =now, Excel instantly returns the current date and time based on your system clock. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we're working with the Today function in Excel, a very useful tool to return the current date without any time component. We can also perform simple date calculations with this function. For example, to get yesterday's date, we use $today -1. When we enter $today, Excel gives us today's date. In this case, it's shown as the 15th of July 25. To get tomorrow's date, we use $today +1. This makes the Today function ideal for generating rolling dates, automated deadlines, report tracking, or comparing records based on the current day. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we're using the Day function in Excel, a simple yet powerful way to extract the day number from a given date. In column B, we have a list of dates. To extract just the day portion, meaning the day of the month, we use this formula, $day B5. In this case, the date in B5, the formula returns 19. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we're using the Month function in Excel, a simple yet powerful way to extract the month number from a given date. In column B, we have a list of dates. To extract just the month portion, meaning the number of the month, we use this formula, $month B5. In this case, the date in B5, the formula returns 2, because February is the second month of the year. Now let's move on to the next function. In this example, we're using the Year function in Excel, a simple yet powerful way to extract the year from a given date. In column B, we have a list of dates. To extract just the year portion, meaning the 4-digit year, we use this formula, $year B5. In this case, the date in B9, the formula returns 2025 because that's the year in the date. Now let's move on to the next function. Now let's use the VLOOKUP function to find the product name and stock based on a given product ID. Click on the first cell under VLOOKUP product name and type VLOOKUP G5, B$4 to E$14 to false. This formula looks for the product ID from cell G5 in the ID column and returns the corresponding product name from the next column. If the ID doesn't exist, it shows Number Not Available error. To retrieve the stock quantity for the same product, use VLOOKUP again, but this time with the stock column as the return range. Let's move on to the next function. In this table, we have a list of grocery items along with their price and quantity. Now let's calculate the total cost for each item based on how many units were bought. To do that, we'll use the product function. Click on the first cell under Cost per item and type =product open parenthesis, C5, D5 close parenthesis. This formula multiplies the price by the quantity, giving you the total cost for that item. Press Enter and drag it down to apply it to the rest of the list. You got it! Was that helpful? In the next video, we'll dive into even more powerful Excel tricks. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. See you soon!